Hi everyone. Today I want to share with you one of the most powerful books I've ever read about money, mindset, and financial freedom. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This book completely changed the way I think about money, work, and life. And in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the entire book, step by step, so you get every single important lesson without even opening the cover yourself. What makes this book special is that it's told through Robert's own childhood story of growing up with two fathers, his biological dad, who he calls his poor dad, and his best friend's father, who he calls his rich dad. Poor Dad was highly educated, had a PhD, and believed in job security, good grades, and climbing the corporate ladder. Rich Dad was a businessman with little formal education, but he believed in building assets, investing, and financial freedom. And throughout his life, Robert had to choose which advice to follow. Their two completely opposite philosophies created the foundation for this book. And trust me, by the end, you'll see why Rich Dad's advice leads to wealth and independence, while Poor Dad's advice often leads to debt and dependence. Let's get started. Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. The first lesson Rich Dad taught Robert is this: the rich don't work for money. At first, this sounds strange, right? Don't we all work to make a living? But here's what Rich Dad meant. When you only work for a paycheck, you're trading your time for money. You're stuck in a cycle where fear of not having enough and the desire for more money keep you trapped in what Robert calls the rat race. Poor Dad always said, go to school, get good grades, find a secure job, work for money. Rich Dad said money should work for you. The difference is massive. Robert and his friend Mike once asked Rich Dad how to get rich. Instead of giving them an easy answer, Rich Dad put them to work at one of his convenience stores. But here's the kicker: they worked for free. Why? Because Rich Dad wanted them to experience what most people never do. The moment you stop working for money, your mind starts searching for opportunities. You stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an entrepreneur. And that's the essence of this chapter. Don't let money control you with fear and greed. Instead, learn to master money and use it as a tool. Lesson 2. Why teach financial literacy? Lesson 2 is the core of the entire book: financial literacy. Poor Dad was a brilliant academic, but he never understood money. He thought his house was his greatest asset. Rich Dad explained that this was wrong. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. It's that simple. Your personal home, while it may increase in value, often costs you money every month. Mortgage payments, taxes, maintenance. That's a liability. Meanwhile, assets, like rental properties, stocks, businesses, create cash flow. They pay you. The middle class often struggles because when they make more money, they also increase their expenses. They buy bigger houses, nicer cars, fancier vacations. But those things are liabilities, not assets, and so even with a higher salary, they stay broke. Rich Dad hammered this into Robert. Focus on acquiring assets, keep expenses low, and reinvest your income into things that generate more income. That's how wealth is built. Not by how much you make, but how much you keep, and how many assets you accumulate. Lesson 3. Mind your own business. This one's a favorite of mine. Mind your own business. Most of us spend our whole lives minding someone else's business, our employer's business. We build their assets, grow their company, and at the end of the month we get a paycheck. But Rich Dad told Robert, if you want to be rich, you have to focus on building your own business. Now that doesn't always mean quit your job tomorrow. It means while you work your job, also work on your own asset column. Maybe that's a rental property, maybe a side hustle, maybe investments in stocks or building a small company. The trap most people fall into? As soon as they get a raise, they buy a bigger house or car. They expand their liabilities instead of their assets. Rich Dad said, always mind your own business first. Build your asset column before anything else. Poor Dad focused on job promotions and degrees. Rich Dad focused on cash flow and investments. One built security that could collapse with a layoff. The other built wealth that kept growing even when he slept. Lesson 4. The history of taxes and the power of corporations. Now here's a mind-blowing lesson. Taxes and corporations. Poor Dad hated taxes but always paid them first. Rich Dad explained that the rich use corporations to protect themselves and reduce their tax burden legally. Here's the difference. An employee earns, gets taxed, then spends what's left. A corporation earns, spends, then gets taxed on what's left. That order matters. Through a corporation, you can deduct expenses, travel, cars, meals, even education before paying taxes. You can reinvest profits, protect assets, and grow wealth faster. The lesson isn't about cheating the system, it's about understanding the system. The rich don't play by the same rules because they took the time to learn them. So financial education also means learning about taxes, corporations, and how to legally structure your life in a way that protects and grows your wealth. Lesson 5. The rich invent money. The 5th lesson is creativity. The rich invent money. Opportunities are everywhere, but most people don't see them because they're trained to look for job security, not investments. Rich Dad explained that with financial education, you develop what Robert calls financial IQ, the ability to see opportunities and act on them. For example, Robert shares stories of buying real estate nobody else wanted. With the right knowledge, he saw value, bought low, and sold high. Or he found ways to create cash flow from properties when others only saw expenses. Poor Dad avoided risks and said, play it safe. Rich Dad taught Robert that risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. With education, research, and creativity, you can minimize risk and invent opportunities for wealth. In other words, the rich don't wait for money. They create it. Lesson 6. Work to learn, don't work for money. The final lesson is about skills. Poor Dad valued specialization. He wanted Robert to be a well-paid employee in one secure field. Rich Dad, on the other hand, encouraged Robert to work in many areas, even if it meant earning less. Why? Because skills are more valuable than paychecks. Robert worked in sales, marketing, investing, things that gave him real-world knowledge. Rich Dad said the most important skill you can learn is how to sell and communicate. Because no matter what you do, those skills multiply your opportunities. Don't just chase jobs for money. Take jobs that teach you valuable skills. Every new skill expands your earning potential and prepares you for financial independence. Here are some of the supporting stories and insights for you. Throughout the book, Robert emphasizes that the biggest obstacles to financial freedom are fear and greed. Fear of losing money keeps people from investing. Greed, or desire for quick rewards, pushes people into bad decisions. The key is to master your emotions, gain financial education, and focus on building assets. Even starting small, like saving to buy your first rental property or investing in a small business, can put you on the path to wealth. Most importantly, Rich Dad taught Robert that wealth isn't about money itself. It's about freedom. The freedom to live life on your terms, not controlled by a paycheck. Here are some of the closing and takeaways. So, after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, here's what we walk away with. Don't work for money. Make money work for you. Learn financial literacy. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money out. Mind your own business. Build your own asset column. Use the system. Learn about taxes and corporations. The rich invent money. Opportunities are everywhere. Work to learn, not just to earn. This book isn't about quick riches. It's about changing your mindset. It's about realizing that financial independence comes from education, discipline, and focusing on assets, not just income. At the end of the day, you don't have to be born rich. You just have to start thinking and acting like rich dad instead of poor dad. And with that, I hope this summary gave you the clarity, inspiration, and practical steps you can start applying today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.